Good evening. On tonight's programme, amid escalating tensions and misinformation, the Syrian military has confirmed its redeployment efforts in Dara and Soweida, while denying reports of incursions into Qaryatain. Shifting to South Korea, as we will in the programme, an impeachment motion against President Yoon Suk-yeol has failed, despite his controversial attempt to impose martial law and subsequent apology, which has fueled opposition calls for his early resignation. That's all coming up tonight. Welcome to our special coverage here on Q News. The Syrian presidency has denied rumours spread by some foreign media outlets claiming that President Bashar al-Assad has left Damascus or made brief visits to other countries. The Syrian presidency emphasized its clear intentions and confirmed that this pattern of misinformation has been used for years to manipulate the state and Syrian society during the war. The presidency asserted that President al-Assad continues to fulfill his national and constitutional duties from Damascus, emphasizing that all news and statements about him are issued through official channels and Syrian national media. The Syrian General Command confirmed that Syrian forces in Dara and Soweida have carried out a redeployment and established a strong, cohesive security perimeter after armed groups attacked military checkpoints in an attempt to distract the Syrian army, which is regaining control over the area. The statement emphasized that the Syrian military is committed to protecting national security and citizens, vowing to confront terrorism with determination. Additionally, a military source denied reports of armed men entering the Qaryatain area southeast of Homs, confirming the military's full readiness. Meanwhile, Egypt has denied claims made by the Wall Street Journal that Egyptian officials urged the Syrian president to leave the country and form a government in exile. Egypt affirms that this information is entirely false and baseless. Also, Egypt calls on all media outlets to verify the accuracy of the information they publish. Ministry of Foreign Affairs has urged Egyptian citizens currently in Syria to exercise the utmost caution, avoid areas of tension, adhere to the instructions of the relevant Syrian authorities, refrain from travelling to Syria at this time, and maintain continuous contact with the Egyptian embassy in Damascus. Ministry has formed a crisis cell to monitor developments regarding the situation of Egyptian nationals in Syria around the clock. The ministry also calls on all Egyptians residing or present in Syria to quickly register their details so the Egyptian embassy in Damascus can review and monitor their conditions, ensure their well-being, and take any necessary action. Iraqi Foreign Minister Fuad Hussein, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, and the Syrian Foreign Minister Bassam al-Sabag have stated that the advance of armed forces in Syria poses a serious danger to Iran, Iraq, and Syria itself. The three countries described the armed faction as terrorists, stressing the need for collective action to confront it. The ministers also condemned the ongoing Israeli attacks on Syria, Gaza, and Lebanon. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, at least 370,000 people, mostly women and children, have been displaced in Syria due to the latest escalation in fighting. Additionally, the UN World Food Programme expects 1.5 million people to be displaced. The White House spokesperson, Karine Jean-Pierre, has stated that the US is closely monitoring developments in Syria. Jean-Pierre said that the US is monitoring the situation and taking it seriously. She added that the US is continuing to stay in contact with the countries in the region.
The NSC put out a statement just last weekend. The Assad regime's ongoing refusal to engage in the political process outlined in UNSCR 2054, and its reliance on Russia and Iran created the conditions now unfolding, including the collapse of Assad regime lines in northwest Syria. So the United States, together with its partners and allies, urged.
Now, for more analysis of the current situation in Syria, we are joined from Cairo by the deputy editor of Al Ahram newspaper, Ashraf Abu al-Hul. Thank you very much for being here with us on Q News. Now, what's your comment on the Syrian presidency's denial regarding President Bashar al-Assad's departure from the country? What do you make of that?
هل السؤال موجه لي؟ نعم يعني أعتقد إنه
Let's give you that question again. What do you make of the Syrian presidency's denial that al-Assad has left the country or has been leaving the country?
Denial of Assad's departure of Syria is not 100% credible because there has been very contradictory comments and reactions. There were some comments by Iran saying that Assad is not in Syria. So maybe this ambiguity might be deliberate by the Syrian side because there are some news saying that the Syrian opposition that is supported by Turkey are now closing up near the Syrian capital Damascus, and there is almost a full collapse of the Syrian army and some kind of surrender of some units. So I believe that it's natural that Assad would be hid inside Damascus, so he might be hiding inside Damascus or left Damascus to some safe place. So the speculations would say that he might be in Tehran.
Okay, and what is your assessment of the current situation inside Syria? Of course, we have various reports coming from different sources. What's your assessment?
For sure, it's a very tragic situation. The Syrian state is collapsing. The advance of the opposition, the extremist opposition, is beyond imagination. And unfortunately, this is coinciding with some kind of a dismantling of the Syrian National Army. Nobody ever thought that the Syrian large cities would fall so quickly, despite what has been said that the Syrian army has rearranged itself and it's doing defense activities, and there is Russian aerial support, and there is a lot of Iraqi militias coming to fight with the regime. But it looks like things are moving from bad to worse. Last night we were saying that after the fall of Homs, the opposition is 160 kilometers from Damascus. Now there are some talks saying that the opposition is something like 20 kilometers away from Damascus. So things are moving from bad to worse in Syria. The information leaked so far and recently is that there is some kind of initiative for some talks in the Asitana group to meet in Doha. And this initiative is calling for having presidential and parliamentary elections between 6 to 9 months from now, and the withdrawal of all foreign forces. And the foreign forces mentioned here would mean the Iranians and Hezbollah, as well as the Turks and the foreign elements that constitute what's called the HTS. So they want them out by maximum by the end of next year, but nobody knows whether this will go or not, and whether the Syrian president will accept this or not. And maybe the Syrian president still accounts on its allies, Iran and Hezbollah, but things are much worse now than any other time. Russia is busy with the war in Ukraine. Iran is more introvert, seeking its own issues, and Hezbollah is leaving, and the Israelis are beyond the litany for Hezbollah. So things are really bad, and there is a dismantling of the internal front in Syria.
And you mentioned the Syrian army there. The Syrian army has confirmed that it's engaging in a reorganization of its forces. That's according to planned strategies, they say. Do you think the Syrian army could achieve some victories in the coming period?
The rapidness of the advancement of the opposition and these extremist militias moved very quickly, and this indicates a collapse of the Syrian army. On the first and second days, we heard that these armed people moved from Aleppo and Hama, and then we got news that the army is redeploying itself and rearranging itself and reobtained certain parts of Hama. But after one day, we saw these extremists just rushing all over Hama and moving to Homs and Idlib and Deir ez-Zor, and this means that things are really bad and truly deteriorating. And according to the news that we get recently, those extremist fighters have neutralized great arsenals of the Syrian army, bombarding the warehouses of the Syrian army weapons, and getting a lot of the warehouses of the Iranian Revolutionary Army and the Iranian fighters and the Hezbollah fighters. They got a lot of intel about what's happening and who's there, and they have bombarded very precisely the places of the Syrian army. And in some areas, all the Syrian army troops surrendered. And despite all what is being said about rearranging the situation, redeployment of the Syrian army, it seems that all of this is not true, because the rate of collapse of the Syrian army is really quick, and the advancement is happening very rapidly.
And how do you view the Arab coalition's efforts to support stability and try and restore security in Syria?
For sure, there is some quick Arab response. There is some quick Arab movement to restore stability in Syria. All Arab leaders communicated with the Syrian leadership and expressed their support. All of them are pro a solution. All of them are pro getting Syria to be away from foreign interventions. Unfortunately, the Iranian presence, the Turkish presence, and the presence of Hezbollah brought all these miseries to Syria. Therefore, I believe that everybody knows and realizes that the situation cannot be improved except with the disappearance of Bashar al-Assad, except with the removal of Bashar al-Assad, because of the animosity between him and the opposition and between him and some regional parties. So if the president approves early elections that would be for the presidential elections and parliamentary elections, maybe things would be better by then, because there has been some Turkish allegations that Assad would not accept any solution and rejects the return of the displaced people, and Assad says nobody returns unless put to trial. So this has given more momentum to the extremists to advance more and to attack Syria more. But probably what the Turks said was not precise, because tens of thousands of these fighters are foreigners, not Syrians. Some fought in Ukraine, some fought in other places all over the world, and others used to be affiliated with Qaeda. So there is an Arab movement to help Syria, but yet Syria needs to help itself, and Syria needs to help itself first by finding a radical solution to the internal situation.
Now, the Egyptian Foreign Ministry has confirmed that reports about the Syrian president are inaccurate and not true, in fact. How do you perceive these misleading reports?
I believe that when Egypt speaks based on proper information that Egypt has actually got. But actually, there are some regional parties here and there have requested Bashar al-Assad to step aside, to step down, or to leave Syria. But till now, I don't think this came from the Egyptian side. I think it was part of some solutions laid on the tables in the negotiations table, and maybe it was part of some American demands to help ending the conflict. Because if this conflict extends more and more, and if battles continue more and more in Syria, things will be more dire, and maybe those extremists will go to other parts of the region. And maybe this conflict would give the opportunity to some sectarian groups in Syria to secede from the Syrian state. And this is actually probable. And some of the areas in Syria are ruled by the locals, not by the central government. And we see the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, are getting pushed away from some of their strongholds. So there is a need for a movement from the Syrian leadership to find a solution.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining me on the program. Ashraf Abu al-Hul, the deputy editor of Al Ahram newspaper. Thank you very much for being here with us. Now to South Korea. An opposition-led motion to impeach President Yoon Suk Yeol over his brief martial law declaration has failed due to an insufficient quorum as Yoon's party boycotted the vote. The National Assembly Speaker announced that with only 195 votes cast, the required two-thirds majority was not reached, rendering the vote invalid. As a result, the National Assembly declared the impeachment motion void. South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol has apologized for his attempt to impose martial law this week and bowed during a televised speech to the nation. Yoon shocked the nation when he granted the military sweeping emergency powers to root out what he called anti-state forces and overcome obstructionist political opponents. He stated that he would not seek to avoid legal or political responsibility for his decision, which he described as being born of desperation.
결코 없을 것입니다. 국민 여러분, 저의 임기를 포함하여 앞으로의 전국 안정 방안은 우리 당에 일임하겠습니다.
Now, for further analysis on the situation in South Korea, we are joined from Tunisia by the Asian Affairs expert and professor at the Higher Institute of Applied Humanities and University of Gafsa, Galel Rehem. Thank you very much for joining us here on Qnews' special coverage. So could you tell us, why did the South Korean parliament fail to impeach the president?
The failure is due to an internal political game within the ruling party, the People's Party, the President's Party. I mean, so there is an internal domestic game, internal domestic calculation by the party itself, because they want President Yoon to resign rather than being removed and impeached by the parliament, because that would be a political and electoral gain in the upcoming elections, presidential elections, in 6 months' time after the president resigns or submits his resignation. So they want the ruling party does not want to hand a gift, a political and electoral gift, to the opposition party right now, and they want the president to resign instead of being removed and impeached by the opposition party at the parliament.
And how do you think the situation will unfold in South Korea in the coming period?
The fate of the president is very clear. I said this on your channel, a couple of days ago, and again, I repeat it again, the fate of the president is sealed. He is going to resign, and in a few days' time, if he does not, by Wednesday, he will face another impeachment motion at the National Assembly. But his own party has abandoned him. As I said, it's not defending the president. From the political party, the point of view of the ruling party, it is not defending the president. For them, President Yoon is done with. But it is, as I said, because of some political calculations, they believe that if the president is impeached and removed, that would be an electoral gift for the next elections to the opposition party. So that's why they are pressuring him to resign before Wednesday, before he faces another impeachment motion at the National Assembly.
Well, his party abstained from the vote. Do you think next time they might actually vote against him?
They did not abstain. They just walked out, and
right.
This is due to internal frictions within his own party. Although the leader of the ruling party, Han Hoon, ordered his own MPs to stay tuned and to attend the meeting, the parliament meeting today, and to vote for the impeachment motion, but there was a kind of internal insurrections within the ruling party. They disobeyed his orders, if I may say, and they just walked out. There were 3 members who walked out, returned to the parliament and wanted to vote for the motion, but it was too late because the House Speaker, the Parliament Speaker, had already declared that the motion was already invalid due to lack of quorum.
And how does this political turmoil in South Korea affect the tensions on the Korean peninsula?
That's an interesting but an intriguing question at the same time. The dialectical relationship between what's going on in North Korea and South Korea cannot be excluded from what's going on in South Korea. It looks like that the decision, the intriguing and unexpected decision by President Yoon to declare martial law on Wednesday, that was due to his own political calculations, because he wanted to shield his own family, his own wife from investigations. He vetoed 3 motions by the parliament to investigate his wife for a series of corruption allegations. But the fact that the president took that kind of a stunning decision was not he did not take that decision in a vacuum. He had some intelligence that there were some leaking of information from a form, and this is a scoop for your channel, by the way. There was a leaking of information about the army, about the military, the South Korean military, by a former South Korean ambassador to his own party, who belongs to the opposition party. And he was afraid, the intelligence, told him that there was a risk that some members of the opposition party might send those, classified information leaked by the former ambassador and former general army in the military might be leaked to the North Koreans. So that's why one of the major declared reasons the president gave trying to justify his declaring of the martial law.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining me here on the program, Galel Rahim, who is a professor at the Higher Institute of Applied Humanities at the University of Gafsa. Thank you very much for joining us. And that brings us to the end of our special coverage for today. Remember to stay updated by following Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEGY. Thanks for watching.